nice easy one to start. If you can, first of all, just introduce yourself, your name and your position within the company.
My name's Emily Godowski. I'm the Business Administrator for Regola Digital Consulting.
Superb. And over to you, Richard, if you can introduce yourself and your position within the company.
My name's Richard Henson. I'm the Director of Regola Digital Consulting.
Superb. Right. I don't know who wants to answer this one first, but if you was to explain in layman's terms, nice and easy, what you do.
Okay, we help SMEs with problems with cybersecurity. We can offer cost-effective solutions and friendly help and advice through to certification, which can be renewed annually, and give them also free insurance, which will take them forward securely to getting new contracts, to keeping their customers happy, to enhancing their reputation, and also keeping a good relationship with the Information Commissioner.
Wow. Very good. So, Emily, tell me, look, you're involved in this business. The threat of cybersecurity right now is very real. And, you know, it's only going to get worse, I'm imagining, really, with all these crazy people out there. But it's very real, the threat of cybersecurity, and people do need to take it seriously, don't they?
They absolutely do, from a personal level up to a business level. And yes, the threat is very real. There have been some big news stories recently. We've had Marks and Spencer's, the Co-op, being hacked, losing millions of pounds, literally losing money hand over fist. If you scale that down to, a 2 or 3 man business, and with a smaller turnover, a hack of that extent could literally shut you down for good. So it's very important for smaller companies not to feel that this only happens to the big fish. It's definitely something that affects everyone. And people are very used to maybe, their social media accounts being hacked or their email address being hacked. So it happens on a personal level. So it definitely can happen to a small or medium-sized organization. So we're not trying to sort of, give a sort of doom and gloom picture. We're trying to basically say this is something that is out there. Everybody at the back of their minds knows it's out there, but they think it's a little bit too difficult to handle. And we're here to help, basically.
Perfect response. And Richard, tell me, so, look, this is such a vast area. I mean, how do you go about securing your cybersecurity with using you guys? I mean, it's just such a minefield.
It is, I agree, but it can be broken down into 5 discrete compartments. So if you look on here, there's 5 different controls. One of them, which companies often get wrong, is updates. And that's simply meaning that the software has to be updated on a regular basis. All software, ever since software became commercial, it was sold on a license basis, which means that part of using that software is to download the updates and install the updates on a regular basis. And in fact, hackers exploit the software if it's not updated. So that's the first thing. There's also the link to the outside world, the boundary of the company to the outside world, firewalls. And if they haven't got the firewalls correct, then obviously that's a vulnerability. So get the updates right, get the firewalls right, get the users right in terms of the users' passwords. And until fairly recently, the advice was use 8 characters and use a sort of jumble of characters and so on. That advice has changed, and it's now considered to be 3 words. And the 3 words together need to be at least 12 characters so that you could say sort of brown jug green, something like that. And that would be your 12 characters, and then that would cover it. And it's something that probably no one would associate with you, because the way hackers get people's passwords is very often is by looking at people, finding out about them on social media and what they're interested in. So the thing is to have something that no one would associate with you in the password. And that needs to be reinforced for users and particularly for administrators. All companies with a system will have an administrator as well. And the administrator is particularly vulnerable. Anyway, so there's two more to go. There's malware, making sure the malware is protected. And just as any other software needs to be updated, the malware protection needs to be updated on a daily basis. And all that's very important. And also particularly important for mobile devices, because the mobile applications aren't necessarily as rigorously enforced by the software companies as you'd get here on, say, Microsoft updates and so on. So it's really important to have the malware or the anti-malware software properly updated rigorously. So that's the four of them. And the fifth one is a more general one connected with the systems and keeping the systems in order. And that's all there is to it, really. That's the five. And Cyber Essentials basically assesses companies on the five.
Superb. Now, for the smaller businesses, the SMEs, Emily, what if they're thinking, oh, I'm all right, I don't really need this, really. I mean, how real is this for like the small businesses to take seriously?
It is extremely important because there is a tendency to think about hackers as this sort of shadowy figures sitting in a server room. It's all a little bit sort of spies and James Bond. But increasingly now, smaller businesses are becoming a target because they know that they can be a portal into something bigger. So the supply chain for big distributors, a bank, a public service like the NHS. The NHS has been hacked a number of times with ransomware. But it's quite possible that it was a small supplier of syringes or swabs or something like that was the portal to get into that. So yes, everybody plays a part. If you're a business to business or business client, you are playing a part in the supply chain, and it's part of having a responsibility to not be the weakest link in that supply chain. And having those 5 controls, you might think, well, I've only got one computer and one mobile, it's just me. But all of those things make you vulnerable. And if you're known in the area, for example, of being a one-man show, people could be watching and they know who you are. They possibly know what car you drive. They can find things out about you. And then they could maybe get into your systems because they've found things out about you, or you're very visible on social media and you say a lot about yourself. That's the way that social engineering works. So nobody's invulnerable, basically. It's a risk for everyone. And normally large corporations have got very big structures around them to protect them and much higher levels of security than Cyber Essentials. But Cyber Essentials is really what everybody should aim for, to stay safe, and also for your clients, for them to know that your information is safe with them, that their information is safe with you, that if they've got, if you're a school or, you're providing a service which maybe involves their children as well, it's a safeguarding issue. So Cyber Essentials is really about people's personal safety as well as just your business bottom line.
And Richard, I just want to ask, so for a small, medium-sized business that comes along to you guys for certification, what is a typical kind of timescale involved? Are they spending weeks, months, days with you? What's the kind of process in general for a small, medium-sized business?
Okay. There's a central organization called IASME, And IASME have a fairly comprehensive website, which includes a tool, a software tool, which the company can sort of go through and answer a few simple questions. It's not the actual Cyber Essentials questions at all, but give them an idea what's involved. So that would be the first stage. And if they think, yeah, we can do this, then they would get in contact with a certification body. We are one of 300 certification bodies around the country, and it would make sense to have a conversation first. It shouldn't just be done through the computer. We very much sort of believe that there should be a face-to-face relationship with the client, if possible. Not always possible, but if possible, certainly so. And then they can be introduced to the questions. Because in my experience, if a company, particularly a small organization, is introduced to the questions, they're frightened off by them. Yeah. So it's to gradually ease them into the fact that it's a process, not a product. It's there to help educate them and their staff. It's there to help make them more secure for themselves and for their clients and for their the supply chain partners, and to help them get contracts and to give them kudos as far as the information commissioner is concerned. So there are all sorts of benefits that needs to be reinforced all the way through, because they see this list of questions. Why do we want to do this? And so keep explaining that there are considerable benefits. I don't know the exact figures, but generally most companies who do Cyber Essentials once come back to do it every year. And not many shy away, because that they realize the benefits. They realize the personal benefits for the organization, and in terms of growth of understanding of security generally for their employees. And then they can go on to do the Cyber Essentials certification, and then it's marked, and then they hopefully pass first time, but there'll always be the odd thing which just needs to be brushed up on, and then they'll get the certification. And the certification itself is actually, it goes up on the web as something called a block mark, which means it can't be faked. And that's worth emphasizing as well.
Okay. So with cybersecurity then, and feel free both of you to answer this one, surely all people have got to worry about is just protecting their emails and maybe their social media accounts. Is there anything else I'm forgetting here? Is there lots of things, servers, I guess, in businesses, people have servers in offices, but, what sort of things we protect in here? I think email's probably the obvious one, phishing, things like that. But what are the real threats and examples of some of those things that people need to be aware of?
Well, I think, judging by sort of the recent high-profile attacks, let's say recently, going back to the last 7 or 8 years when it really hit the headlines, a lot of it was caused by lack of updates. In some cases, it was jaw-dropping lack of updates, like still using Windows XP, for example, and that was unfortunately that was the NHS ransomware. But that's happening all the time, and it's been estimated. I don't want to terrify anybody, but it just takes 14 days for a hacker to work out a way around a vulnerability after the manufacturer has announced that vulnerability to the world and actually produced a patch that everybody's supposed to install. The problem is that software is continually evolving. When it's produced and when it's put out to market, it's got vulnerabilities. They don't know the vulnerabilities themselves initially. They find out about them and they patch them as quickly as they can, but it's up to the user to put those patches in as quickly as possible. So in my opinion, that's the biggest problem. Every time you hear something on the news, that's a vulnerability has been exploited somewhere along the line. There may well be user involvement, internal insider involvement as well. But it's about exploiting, finding out that there are vulnerabilities and actually exploiting them.
And there is a flip side to this as well, in that, Cyber Essentials, basically the statistic is that you are 80% protected from hackers if you have those technical controls, which are all inside your machine. They're all sort of organic within what you do. The other 20% is human error. So I would say for anybody running a business who's hiring staff, let's say, for example, you're in Devon and you're in hospitality and you've got quite a high turnover. It's a seasonal business. You've got people coming in and out. To always invest that time in training them and telling them, I don't want anybody bringing in USBs from home. I don't want people plugging in their phones to our system, keeping their personal devices separate from their business devices. And, just giving them that sort of almost like a sort of 10-point training, saying these are the things that we, or can you even sign an acceptable IT usage policy that says that you will hold to these sort of principles of how to use the IT in this restaurant, in this hotel, until you leave. Because without that sort of sense of accountability, people will, click on the wrong thing, or, you give them a bit of training, a cool little video to watch or something like that, which is going to teach them what to watch out for, how to set things up correctly, and to report anything if they see anything anomalous. If they do spot a scam, that does need to be reported. It is an incident which needs to be reported as a cybersecurity incident. So just encouraging everyone in your business to be vigilant, because that 20% is normally what brings the business down. So, they are normally actual people, interlopers, who've either done something, made an omission, or they're people who are insiders who actually mean damage and mean harm. So you've got that 80% is great. You've got to really consider your staff as well.
Now, we hear a lot in the news these days about AI, right? AI is very out there at the moment. Now, can AI just sort everything for us? Isn't that going to answer all our problems?
It would be naive to think that was the answer. I mean, it is the answer for the hackers, because it means that the hackers aren't necessarily sort of individuals that are highly skilled in IT, but they can, of course, use AI to produce all sorts of tools that can actually detect vulnerabilities all around the world very quickly and write software that can actually use those vulnerabilities to get into people's systems. So as ever, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, yeah, it's great. We've got more software, more machinery, but so have the hackers. And there's generally, it's the fact of life these days that there are more hackers than there are defenders like ourselves. If we're still on catch up, hopefully that'll be redressed before too long.
Superb. So, Richard, I'll ask you this again. How has Cyber Essentials evolved?
Okay. I think it evolved from, and I just need to say this correctly, an acknowledgement by government that critical infrastructure could be under threat through the internet and therefore would need to be protected. It was then realized that critical infrastructure was also served by businesses across the supply chain, and it wasn't just sufficient to put lots of technological expertise into the actual critical infrastructure itself, but also the businesses that worked with critical infrastructure. So the problem was that there was already a standard available for critical infrastructure, but nothing for SMEs. To give you some idea, it's the low cost would be £10,000. Probably someone would have to be sort of taken out of their normal job for about a month in order to attain that sort of standard. And it was realized quite quickly that this was ridiculous and something needed to be done. And that's really how Cyber Essentials came about, to have something that would be affordable to small businesses and wouldn't take very long. There wouldn't be too much training involved actually to start the process, to start the ball rolling, and also to make sure that the benefits to the SMEs would be clearly apparent through trust from supply chain partners, through a good relationship with the Information Commissioner. And it was hoped that it would snowball through, I think, organizations like Chambers of Commerce and Federation for Small Businesses, that this was a jolly good thing and businesses should take it up as soon as possible. But as you know, small businesses are fickle, and they tend to do what other people or their mates do. And if their mates aren't doing it or haven't heard about it, then why should they do it? And so it's been a slow process, slower than anybody, I think, would have liked. Cyber Essentials came out in 2014 after 2 years of development. And by the time it had started, already the ecosystem had changed, and it continues to change. So Cyber Essentials is evolving. It will always evolve because the whole of the cybersecurity landscape is continually changing. But it is better. I think Cyber Essentials was unique to the UK. And when the UK government sort of brought out its cybersecurity strategy in 2011, thinking behind that was to make the UK the safest place in the world to do business. And Cyber Essentials was the UK leading the world, literally. But it's the implementation that's been the sticking point.
Emily, do you have any testimonials? Any kind of clients you've worked with recent? You don't have to mention names or anything like that, but anyone that's kind of come on board with you guys has really seen that kind of impact and kind of opened their eyes?
Yes, yeah, we did have a client very recently, in fact, they were in the sort of tech world, educational tech world, and yes, they were particularly pleased with the learnings they had from going through the Cyber Essentials process, and they complimented Richard on how he'd sort of gently guided them, sort of shown them in the right direction, and they were very pleased that they got their certification, and they're looking, in fact, at coming back for Cyber Essentials Plus, which is the level up, which involves a vulnerability scan of your systems. So Cyber Essentials Plus basically is the backup. It's the proof that what is actually going on inside your machines is what you said was going on inside your machines. So yeah, that was a really lovely win for us, and they gave us a 5-star review as well. So yeah, very pleased with that one. So we hope, everybody who's gone away with their Cyber Essentials certification, we've done well over 100, that they have a new sort of understanding of the way their business works, really. I think for some people it's maybe seen as a chore because they're not naturally sort of comfortable with tech, and they have to go and look a lot of things up that they don't understand. But it's nice now, particularly since the relationship with our clients has changed. It's not only through IASME, the Information Assurance for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. They're the body that sort of created Cyber Essentials, and they pass out the clients to us. We now get a direct relationship with those clients. So they can ask us questions. They can say, why is that wrong? If Richard sort of says that's not enough proof, they're able to come back at us, which is nice because we're having a two-way conversation now.
And where do people go for this training with you? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? Do you online?
It does happen through a portal. So they are, they're assigned to us. And so Richard would accept the allocation, and then basically their answer paper becomes visible, and Richard goes through each question and will have a comment on it, whether they're compliant or not in each of those single questions. And it can pass back and forth a number of times. Sometimes there might be very glaring omissions, which will mean a fail, but they do have an opportunity to sort of normally make corrections or find more information, which then allows Richard to pass them, and they have their block mark issued at that point.
Yeah, it's not just me. We're also
Yeah.
there's another assessor works in our organisation, and I think there are a total of about 1,000 assessors around the country working for the various different certification bodies. But we do like to make sure before they actually get onto the questions in the first place that they are reasonably well prepared and it's not too much of a shock. So if it's going to be a shock, then it's not going to be it's going to be an unpleasant process for them. And we want it to be a learning process as well as an assessment process. And that seems to be working quite well. And that's the Centre IASME encourage certification bodies and assessors to educate as well as assess, which we think that's the strength of the scheme.
Okay, so Richard, if you can just tell me what people can expect price-wise for getting involved with you guys.
Okay, it depends on the size of the organisation. So if it's a micro business, which is defined as between 1 and 10 employees, that's £320 plus VAT. For a small business, which is between 10 and 50, then is 440 plus VAT. For what's known as a medium-sized enterprise, between 50 and 250, it's £500 plus VAT. Some larger organisations like it as well, and they would pay 600 plus VAT.
You've mentioned about the price, but SMEs don't normally want to spend much on cybersecurity. But I think, listen to what you've said, you've kind of priced it right. It is quite affordable, isn't it? I mean, feel free to answer either.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing is dictated. Generally, for example, say a company is bidding for a government contract, a lot of government contracts for particular government departments do actually make Cyber Essentials compulsory. So if you're making a bid, you don't have a choice. You have to get on board with it. We'd like it to be more of a choice for people, and we want people to sort of see it more as very necessary for them, even if they're not bidding for a government contract, just for their own security and their clients' security. But generally those prices are set by IASME. So the price list is there on the IASME website. Where the difference might come in is if, for example, Richard needs to spend a lot of time with the company explaining to them or pre-explaining or preparing them, maybe doing an initial assessment and saying, okay, you've got these 3 machines. I can already see that there's going to be a bit of an issue here. You might need to correct some things before you actually approach that questionnaire. So Richard would then charge for his time. But the basic price list is out there with IASME. So when people look it up and they say, I've Google Cyber Essentials, I've been told I have to get it, that's normally where they'll go and that's where they'll find the price. And other certification bodies have their own price lists, but they're normally graded according to how much help you need to give, how much hand-holding there is. Yep.
And in terms of cost of the technology, then updates don't cost anything. In fact, they've already paid in advance to the software company for the software and all the updates. So they might as well get their own value for money. The problem comes in, and it'll be hitting everywhere later this year, when the actual operating system itself comes to the end of its life, and the Microsoft Windows 10 is going out of life in October, which means that everybody's got to update to Windows 11, otherwise they won't get any support, and the hackers are absolute field day. It's easy to upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 for a relatively modern machine, but anything more than about 7 or 8 years old, the architecture on the motherboard makes it basically Windows 11 takes a look, it says, nah, that's out of date. I'm not going to go anywhere near that computer. So there'll be quite a bit of investment required by businesses in order to get the new hardware to run the Windows 11. IASME have got it on their website, sort of warning everybody there's something goes on LinkedIn every month. So we hope that more and more businesses are aware, But as ever, there'll be a few who'll be caught out in October. And the investment is in new hardware. And that's one of the things that the government has been concerned with, that they won't be able to afford the updates, particularly that the last time this happened, when it was Windows 10 was sort of the one, then companies said, we can't afford this. And you could understand, I think that was the last 2010 recession, something like that. You could understand why they were having problems with it. But cybersecurity should be part of a budget. It doesn't have to be a major budget, but as long as there's something in the kitty every year for changes of hardware that will be necessary from time to time. Windows changes to that extent once every 10 years. So, that they shouldn't really be caught out. But some will be. Some will be. So that there are these extra hardware costs.
We'll keep reminding people over the next few months. It is October, isn't it? It comes in. So we'll keep things coming out on our social media, telling them, have you checked? Are you, and is your machine 20 years old? Are you going to be able to even put Windows 11 on it? People might, and then that will come as a bit of a surprise. And, the 320 plus VAT for a micro company to get Cyber Essentials suddenly blurs into insignificance when you've actually got to get a whole new machine. Yeah.
And in terms of applications, the simplest way for a company to keep up is to use the cloud version of the product. Now, there's something like, for example, Outlook, Office 365. A lot of companies are still using it on their own machines rather than using it in the cloud. But the advantage using it in the cloud, they've always got the latest version. And as far as at least that software, that application is concerned, they've already done the updates bit. It might cost them a bit more, but it's better than getting hacked.
It's peace of mind. It's really nice that you guys do your social media, doing this today. You're very front people, which is great because people love to buy from people. If you were to talk about how people contact you, do you have a preferred way of contacting you? Are you email? Are you phone calls? Are you Zooms? Or
I'd say probably email. Yes. So we've rehashed our email addresses recently. So our sort of inquiries line is hello@regola.co.uk. Yes, and we all have our individual names as well. So I want to put a little shout out to our colleague, Sean Walton, who's been with us now for about 2.5-3 years, and does a great job on our blogs. I would encourage anybody to go to our website, regoladigitalconsulting.co.uk, to have a look at those blogs, because a lot of them are very much personal. There's one that he does every summer about children staying safe online through the summer holidays and what parents can look out for, what measures they can put in place. And it's especially about keeping an open dialogue with children and young people about what they're viewing, taking an interest in it rather than being too forbidding, and just approaching it as something that you're just looking out for with them rather than standing over them. But there are lots of other ones about IT training, what's good IT training, what's bad IT training, shadow IT, all sorts of things, deep fakes, which we hear a lot about on the news now. So he goes into all the nooks and crannies, basically, but particularly the things that can affect businesses. Yeah.
Superb. Now, Richard, I'm going to ask you both this question, but I'm going to start with you, Richard.
Okay.
Now, is there anything else that I've not prompted you about so far in our chat today that you want to get across right now that's on your mind? Anything I've not prompted you for?
I think as far as cybersecurity training and education is concerned, there aren't enough young people either interested in or wanting to come into cybersecurity as a profession. And it has to be something to do with the general perception of what cybersecurity is and what sort of that sort of career would appeal to them, and they could see themselves doing that in 10 years' time and having a satisfactory career. I personally think there's too much emphasis on the spies, the cyber spies side. It's great to get that sort of job. It must be very exciting to do it, and I'm sure it's extremely well paid, but there won't be thousands of them, and there needed to be thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of cybersecurity professionals there to support businesses. And you say, why wouldn't people want to do that? It's about personal skills, people skills, as well as technical skills. And it tends to be the college courses, and to some extent the university courses, are focused on technical skills rather than the soft skills that are required to make this really happen in an effective way. And and IASME are aware of this. I think the government, certainly the NCSC, that's the National Cybersecurity Centre, are well aware of this, but it's a case of getting it into education and getting it into training and so on. And so there needs to be a way of, rather than saying there's these really high-paid jobs in cyber, as I said, there are moderately well-paid jobs as well in cyber. You don't have to be a technical expert in order to do it. You need to have reasonable analytical skills, but that's about the most important thing is to be able to talk to people and talk in business language, in personal language, so people will understand it rather than their eyes glazing over, which, because as soon as that happens, you know that you've lost them. Yes. So education. Back to Tony Blair's education.
Yeah, I think there's also an element of trust. Basically, I think everybody knows that running a business, we've got a lovely, vibrant business community here in Devon and Cornwall. Lots of people are friends. We were talking with you earlier about how you know this person from that networking group, and you all support each other. And cybersecurity is a matter of trust. So you would hope that you can trust the people that you deal with. You can trust your suppliers to take care of these things. And, Cyber Essentials and having that, as a big blue tick, having that on your website. You can even put a sticker in your window if you're a shop or whatever. You could be an ice cream parlor for all I know. But, it basically says any business we do with you, when we take your information, it's safe. And people do really want to know that. They want to know that their privacy is respected. They want to know their personal details are respected, that their bank details are safe and aren't just going to get leaked out all over the place. So, I think it also helps to build trust between businesses, and that can only be a good thing to help everybody thrive.